everyone. Discussion post 4. Getting right into question number 1. Is it fair for a relatively small minority group to ask a professional sports franchise to change its name? I think fairness is not always equated by numbers. I think fairness is what gives everyone an equal playing field and what they need to have the same chance of success as everybody else. If they were asking, I don't know, the Rangers or the Cowboys to change their name, I feel like that would be a little bit excessive. The Kansas City Chiefs, as we saw in the discussion, they changed their logo on their uniform. They did not change their name. So there's that. However, the issue with the Redskins is not that they just won't change a logo. It's that their name is a derogatory term. In the discussion post, there was a quote, the term Redskins is not a descriptive term the way that Chiefs or Braves or Cowboys is just the name of a group or a name that was used by those groups. The issue is that Redskins is not descriptive, rather it is a historically racial slur to Native Americans. So is it fair for a small group to ask if their name can be changed? If the name they have is one that's a racial slur, is derogatory, I think that's fair, because the issue there is not how many people. The issue is what you are inadvertently calling another person. Now, having that name doesn't necessarily mean that the team management are specifically calling Native Americans Redskins, but what they're doing by having that name, by using that logo, is they're perpetuating the free use of that term, even if it's indirect, even if they're not advocating that that's an okay thing to say to those people. They're keeping that term in circular modern conversation. They're letting people hear that term used without the negative connotation, without understanding the historical perspective of where that term came from. And as a result, they're kind of indirectly supporting people that would use that term or the use of that term in that way, not because they're saying, oh yeah, you should call people this, but by keeping that term in modern vernacular, they are keeping the undertones of that word also in modern vernacular. Question number 2, is it reasonable to defend the name as a unifying force? Yes, but does that justify it? No. Obviously, team names, team mascots are part of the morale of the team and of the people who support the team, especially if you have a team that's been around for like 80 years. Obviously, there's a lot of historic backbone to that team and to that term. Families generations back have been supporting this team and calling it this name. You have all this old family memorabilia with this name and these logos on it. So understandably, there's this mindset of that term referring to a group and the colors and the name and the mascot unifying this group of people that support this particular team. But does that outweigh the cultural damage, societal damage to this people group that you are inadvertently encouraging the discrimination of? So I think a name can be a unifying force, but then you need to think about what name you're using. especially in a modern context where we're a lot more cognizant of the fact that using these terms as team names is not okay, does that mean that we should continue doing it? I disagree. What are some possible compromises that could be reached? This was the really interesting question for me, and the one that I really appreciated. I, on my own now, want to go and do more research on instances where this has happened. I did a little bit and found some things. I want to go try and find more. Looking specifically at what the Chiefs did, they didn't change their name, but they changed their logo on their uniforms. Now, it did say that they're not completely removing Chief Wahoo from all of their paraphernalia because they want to be able to keep the logo and the trademark associated with the logo, because if they don't keep using it, then the trademark goes away, and then other random people could start putting that on their unofficial merchandise and make a killing off of it, which isn't necessarily moral, but in that context would be legally allowed. So they're going to continue selling things with that logo to keep the trademark, but it's not going to be on their uniforms that the team wears on the field. They talked about how their fans got to a point where they realized no one's going to come into their homes and take their old family memorabilia of the Chiefs. Nobody is going to come into their home and take away any footage that they have. They said they're not going to go back and superimpose a new logo over footage of their team in past film. But going forward, this is what they're going to do. It's going to continue to live as part of the team history, but it's not going to live in the same way in the team's future. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. I understand the copyright issue. It'll be interesting to see how long that argument holds up, and if they continue to do that and their fans are okay with it. If people start trying to protest using Chief Wahoo at all, and then in that case, will they let it go? And if they let it go, are they going to try and keep other people from using it? Is some new policy going to be put in place by a court system or a patent system so that even if they're not using it anymore because it was originally theirs, they're not going to use it? It's going to be interesting to see how that goes in the next 10, 20 years. With the Redskins, there was a quote from Daniel Snyder, who's their owner, saying that they will never change the name. The Chiefs didn't change their name either. They changed their logo. They changed the representation of a mascot. Would it be possible, even if they're not yet ready to change their name, to change their mascot or to change their flag or to change what's represented on uniforms or how cheerleaders are attired or any of their other things? Maybe reducing the amount of merchandise that they have. That could be an option also for the Chiefs, is having merchandise that's mostly just the Block C and having certain specific paraphernalia that has Chief Wahoo on it, but only those limited things, so that if someone wants to have something with that mascot on it, they can. But there's also plenty of product available for people that want to support the team, represent the team, but don't necessarily want to support that aspect of the team. There's another team from Chicago, the Blackhawks. I briefly looked them up. I'm not familiar with hockey really at all, but an argument could be made that what the Redskins are doing is similar to what the Blackhawks are doing, and why aren't we arguing about the Blackhawks changing their name? The distinction there obviously is, again, the Redskins name is intended, original use was as a racial slur, and the Blackhawks are an actual tribe that I believe, if I recall correctly, are indigenous to that area. I could be wrong. I'd need to go back and review that. But potentially, because there are a lot of Native Americans in the Pacific Northwest, they could rename the team after a tribe that's indigenous to that area, or a tribe that's indigenous to another part of the country, and which might get them some good press because they're going from having a name, having paraphernalia that's derogatory to this people group, to changing their name to the name of an actual tribe and supporting them, potentially. Could be some good free PR. Not entirely free, because they'd have to change all of their uniforms and everything, but part of this argument is they need to do that anyway. This is a very complicated issue. On the one hand, if you are, again, using this term, you're perpetuating the use of this word and the connotations of this word. You're indirectly supporting harmful and disrespectful stereotypes. But on the other hand, if you do change the name and you have an established fan base that doesn't want those things to be changed, you can get a lot of backlash. You can end up with financial discrepancies because people are boycotting games, not buying tickets. Sponsors and financial backers could pull out. But then again, is it possible that by making that change, they could get more support from people that previously were not going to invest in the team because of this issue? They talked about how the owner of the Redskins supposedly talked to some people that were in Native American tribes, and that they found that a lot of the people were okay with it. But then someone from this group changed the mascot, that's petitioning changing mascots, said that his findings were not representative, that of course the tribes are not one unified body, they're all different tribes, different people will have different preferences, that the issue is not whether or not they should be allowed to change the name, that it's more of a social justice issue, and that even if there are tribes that are okay with it, there are enough that aren't, and it's a term that's used to degrade them and degrade their heritage, and therefore should be discontinued either way. I initially started reading this and had a very firm opinion about what I thought. Reading all of this made me reevaluate my position. I've kind of come back full circle, and I still stand with the fact that changes need to be made, although I do now understand why they would need to be made more slowly. If they're not going to change the name, I think changing some of their logos would be good, changing some of their merchandise would be good. It's not ideal, but it would be a good start. They wouldn't have to change their name immediately. They could start with something a little bit smaller, more manageable, test the waters with their fan base, see how it goes, see if maybe they'd garner some support from people that were previously against the team. I think they need to either completely change it or start making these small incremental steps. At the moment, it looks like they're just decided they're going to dig their heels in, and I don't think they can continue doing that. I think they might try. I don't think they should. And I think eventually public outcry is going to become big enough and strong enough that they're going to be forced to make a change. It'd be better for them to go ahead and start making some incremental changes now and garner a little bit of goodwill to help the process along, rather than having this kind of all or nothing stance that they currently do. Because in history, do all or nothing stances usually turn out well? No, they don't. This was really interesting. I now have new stuff I'm going to be Googling in my free time. And I'm glad we got to talk about this. Have a wonderful day.